At the baby shower, his new girlfriend whispered, "You're just his past." I smiled, but when the DNA results arrived, she ran out screaming. Where in the world are you watching this from, and what time is it? Subscribe now, because this story won't just entertain you. It might haunt you. I've never been good at trusting people. Maybe it's because of the way I grew up, the way everything was always just uncertain. People tell you things, they promise you things, and then you grow up and realize that all those promises were empty. All those words were just hollow echoes meant to keep you in line. But I never thought he would be one of those people. The man I spent so many years with, the one I thought I could trust, the one I thought I knew better than anyone, had become just another stranger, another person who left a wound and walked away. It started small, with the distance between us growing like a shadow I couldn't escape. He was always busy, always working late, always distracted. At first I blamed myself, thinking I was too demanding, too emotional, too needy. But when the whispers started, when he began disappearing for hours at a time, when he didn't even try to make it to dinner anymore, I started to see the cracks. That's when I started to doubt him, and when I started doubting myself. I wish I could tell you I was strong, that I stood up for myself from the very beginning, but the truth is I felt small. Every time he came home, I tried to act normal, try to pretend like everything was fine, but inside I was a mess. His silences spoke louder than any words could, and they filled the house with a tension I didn't know how to fight. I wasn't just losing him, I was losing myself too. And that's when she showed up. First, I didn't think anything of it. She was charming, polite, always smiling like she was trying to be friends. But I could feel the way she looked at me, the way her eyes seemed to linger on me with that little flicker of something I couldn't quite place. It wasn't until the baby shower, the one I had thrown for him, that it all came crashing down. She had been there all day, quiet at first, but as the evening wore on, I started to notice how often she'd lean in close to him, how they'd laugh and whisper in corners, as if the world didn't exist around them. And then during the moment when I was cutting the cake, when everyone was distracted, she whispered in my ear, "You're just his past." I didn't even have time to react, to form the words, because I didn't know what was worse, the fact that she thought she could say something like that to me, or the fact that I didn't even know how to fight back. I smiled though, because that's what I always did. I smiled through the pain, through the insecurities, through the mess of my life. But that smile, it felt like it was going to crack. It felt like I was going to break right there in front of everyone. It wasn't until a few days later that everything came tumbling down. The DNA test. I didn't even know why I agreed to it at first. I didn't want to know the truth, not really. But when the results came, everything I had been ignoring, everything I had been trying to push away, came rushing back with a force I couldn't control. There, in black and white, was the confirmation that she was right. I wasn't his future. I was just his past. And in the moment that the words sank into my skin, I felt a coldness that I couldn't shake. The room spun, and for a split second I wasn't sure where I was or who I was anymore. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. And then she showed up again, but this time it wasn't for a smile or a handshake. She was at the door, her hands trembling, her face pale, her eyes wide with shock. She stared at the letter, then at me, and then she ran. Screaming. She ran out of the house, leaving me there, standing in the middle of a truth I had never wanted to face. I didn't even know what to feel at that moment. Anger? Betrayal? Regret? They all swirled inside of me, but I couldn't latch onto any one of them. It was as if my heart had just stopped beating for a second, as if time itself had frozen. And I stood there in that silence, the weight of everything crashing down on me. I had spent years building this life, this relationship, this future, and in one single moment, it all felt like it was disintegrating in my hands. I wanted to run after her, to demand answers, to scream at her, at him, but all I could do was stand there, staring at the door, wondering how the hell things had gotten so messed up. But it wasn't just about her. It wasn't just about him. It was about me. About everything I had believed in. About the way I had let myself get caught up in a story that was never mine to begin with. That's when I knew. This was just the beginning. Something was coming. Something bigger than the lies, bigger than the betrayal. And I wasn't going to stand there and let it crush me. The next few days passed in a blur of empty conversations and unanswered questions. But when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the same woman I had seen before. There was something different now. A quiet resolve in my eyes, a fire that had been sparked. I was done being the past. I was going to be something else, something more. But I couldn't shake the unease that lingered in the air. A look, a text, a silence. It all felt like the calm before a storm. And deep down I knew. This was only the beginning. It was like I was living in a house of mirrors, and every time I looked at something the reflection shifted, the truths turned into lies, and the lies into something worse. It's funny how quickly things change, how easily you can wake up one morning and realize the world you've been living in was a facade. After the DNA test, I thought I would finally know the truth, but all it did was make everything I had believed in more blurry, more distorted. The reality I had clung to was slipping away like sand through my fingers, and I didn't know how to stop it. At first, I just wanted to bury myself in the silence, pretend it was all just a bad dream I could wake up from. But the silence wasn't enough anymore. The quiet in my house, the emptiness, the coldness between us, it was suffocating. I couldn't look at him without feeling like I was drowning. Every word he spoke, every touch he gave, it felt like a lie, like I was being fed something toxic and didn't even realize it. I wasn't just losing him. I was losing myself, and I had no idea how to stop it. The only thing that kept me going, the only thing that kept me from completely breaking, was the faint idea that there was something more beneath the surface, something waiting to be uncovered. And then the phone call came. It was late. I had just crawled into bed, my head still buzzing from the day, when my phone rang. The number wasn't familiar, but something in the back of my mind told me I needed to answer. "Is this her?" the voice on the other end asked, and I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. "Who is this?" I said, my voice tight with suspicion, but the person didn't answer. Instead, they just dropped a name, and that name made everything I thought I knew about my life, my family, my history come crashing down. It was the name of someone I hadn't heard in years, someone I thought was long gone. My father. I had been told my whole life that he had abandoned us, that he left my mother and me without a second thought, but the truth was much messier than that. This person on the other end of the line claimed to have known my father, said he'd been looking for me, said there was something I needed to know. But they didn't give me details, only that the past I thought I understood was a lie. And suddenly, all the stories my mother had told me, all the things I had been taught to believe about my family, felt fake, like they were carefully constructed to keep me in the dark. My father hadn't just abandoned us. He had disappeared for a reason, and that reason wasn't a simple one. There was something more to it, something my mother had never told me. The weight of that revelation hit me like a freight train. It was a secret I wasn't supposed to know, a truth I wasn't supposed to uncover. And now it was out there, hanging in the air between me and the person I had trusted the most. I couldn't breathe, but I had to know more. I had to understand why everything I thought I knew about my own life was falling apart. So I started digging, following the trail of breadcrumbs that had been left for me, hoping it would lead me to answers. But the more I uncovered, the more I realized that the world I had built for myself was made of smoke and mirrors. Every relationship I thought was solid, every friendship I thought was real, nothing was what it seemed. And that's when I started to notice the small things, the little signs that had always been there, but that I had been too blind to see. My best friend, who had always been there for me, who I thought was my rock, had started to act differently. Her texts became more distant, her calls shorter, and I could feel the tension building between us, even though we had never fought before. And when I asked her about it, when I confronted her, her eyes darted away for just a second too long, and in that moment I knew. She wasn't being honest with me. It wasn't just the lies from the people I trusted. It was the way I had been living my life, the way I had let myself be dragged through the dirt without ever questioning the motives of the people around me. I had been the fool. I had been so focused on holding on to a life that wasn't mine, so desperate to keep the facade intact, that I hadn't stopped to think about whether it was all just a trap. And that's when I realized the truth. I wasn't just the victim. I had been complicit in this web of lies, playing my part, pretending like I didn't know anything, pretending like everything was fine. I had been so afraid of losing what little I had left, that I had ignored the cracks in the foundation, ignored the warning signs that had been there all along. And now, as the pieces of my life slowly started to unravel, I couldn't help but feel like I was losing control of everything. It was like being pulled underwater, struggling to keep my head above the surface, but each time I thought I had a breath, the weight of the truth dragged me deeper. That night I went to bed feeling empty, feeling like the ground beneath me had just been ripped away. But as I lay there in the dark, my phone buzzed again. Another message. Another clue. This time it wasn't from a stranger. It was from him. My boyfriend. The man I thought I knew better than anyone. I need to tell you something. Meet me at the place we used to go. The place. The one we had visited when things were good, when we were happy, when we thought we had a future. Something in me told me this wasn't just another apology, that this wasn't just another attempt to patch things up. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew it was going to change everything. I felt a cold chill run through me as I pulled on my coat and headed out the door, not knowing what was waiting for me at that place, but knowing that whatever it was, it would shatter whatever I thought was left of my world. And when I arrived, standing in front of that familiar, now abandoned place, the last thing I expected to hear was, "It's not what you think." The darkness was creeping in slowly but surely. The lies were collapsing, and the truth was emerging from the shadows. But I still didn't know what it all meant. What was real? What had been a lie? The answers were just out of reach, hanging there in the air like a poison I couldn't swallow. And I was still waiting for the other shoe to drop. I had no idea that the real unraveling was just about to begin. I still remember the cold wind that night, the way it cut through me as I stood outside that place, the one we had called ours, the one that used to feel like home. But now it felt like a tomb. His words, "It's not what you think," hung in the air, like an accusation I couldn't shake. I was frozen not just by the chill of the night, but by the truth that was now racing through me. Shards of glass cutting through my skin, each revelation more painful than the last. Everything had led to this moment, and yet, it felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, about to fall into something deeper, darker than I could have ever imagined. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't the naive girl I once was, waiting for someone to save me, to tell me what to do. No, I had learned how to play the game, how to see the lies behind the smiles, how to hear the truths behind the silence. And now I was ready to make my move. The door creaked open and there he was. His face was a mask of uncertainty, but in his eyes I saw it, the guilt, the shame, the regret. He didn't have to say anything. I already knew what he was about to confess. But I wasn't here to listen to apologies. I wasn't here to make things right. I was here for justice, for the truth that had been hidden from me for so long. The story I had believed, the family I thought I had, the man I thought I loved, none of it was real. It was all built on lies. And now I was going to make him pay. I walked past him, not looking back, and sat down in the corner of the room, my mind racing with every twist of this sickening tale. I had already known about his betrayal, the affair, the way he had manipulated me into staying in this toxic relationship. But what I hadn't known was the extent of it. The lies weren't just about me, they were about everything. About our future, about the life we had built together. About the child we had planned to raise. The DNA test, it had been a setup. The woman at the baby shower, the one who whispered those cruel words, wasn't just some jealous ex-girlfriend. She had been part of the plan all along. They were working together. It was all a game to them. But it wasn't to me. My heart wasn't just broken. It was shattered, and every piece of it was a weapon now. I stood up, walked over to him slowly, taking my time, watching as his expression shifted, fear creeping into his eyes. He wasn't the man I thought he was, and in that moment I realized I wasn't the woman I thought I was either. The rage inside me was burning like wildfire. But it wasn't just anger. It was betrayal, it was grief, it was the realization that everything I had believed was a lie. I had spent so long trying to fix the broken pieces, trying to hold on to something that was already gone, that I had lost myself in the process. But not anymore. I wasn't going to let him control this anymore. I wasn't going to let him control me. He was the one who had messed with the wrong woman. I reached into my bag, pulling out the letter I had found hidden in his things. It was from her, the woman he'd been seeing behind my back. It was the final piece of the puzzle, the evidence I needed to destroy him. I held it out in front of him, watching as his face paled. "You thought I didn't know, didn't you?" I said, my voice cold, every word like a knife being driven into him. "You thought you could lie to me forever, that I'd never see the truth. But I see it now. I see everything." His mouth opened, but no words came out. He was speechless, trapped in his own web of lies. The power had shifted, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I was in control. "You ruined everything. I whispered, my voice trembling with a mixture of pain and satisfaction. And now, I'm going to make sure you never forget what you did to me. He looked at me, his eyes wide with panic, but I wasn't done yet. I'll tell everyone what you did, I continued. What you did to me, to us, to our family. I'll make sure everyone knows who you really are. And you'll never have peace again. You'll never feel safe again. I could feel the weight of his guilt pressing down on me, but it didn't make me feel better. It didn't erase the hurt, the years of emotional manipulation, the constant second-guessing, the tears I'd cried when I thought I was just being paranoid, when I thought I was being crazy. No, this wasn't about forgiveness. It wasn't about closure. This was about retribution, about taking back the power he had stolen from me piece by piece. And in the silence that followed, I could hear my heartbeat, steady and calm, like a drum in the background. It wasn't a victory, not in the way I had imagined it. But it was something. I had broken free. I had taken back control. And as I turned to leave, my steps slow but firm, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of peace. Maybe this wasn't the end of the story, maybe the truth wasn't fully out yet, but I was done. I had walked through the fire, and I had come out stronger on the other side. The pieces were still scattered, but I didn't need to put them all back together. Not anymore. As I walked away from that place, I realized that the only person who had ever truly held power over me was me. I wasn't the victim. I wasn't the fool. I was the one who would write the ending to this story. And if you stayed this long, you already know this wasn't just a story. This was a warning. Subscribe. And remember me.